Hey guys, tonight we're going back to the year 1900, an era of candlelit rooms, soot-streaked cities, and a version of America that looks more like a sepia-toned fever dream than the nation you know today. This is a world where horses still rule the streets. Tuberculosis is the vibe killer at every party, and the phrase work-life balance sounds like a joke a steelworker would cough out between shifts. And I hate to break it to you, but yeah, you probably won't survive this. Not unless you're rich, male, white, and lucky enough to dodge diphtheria and the occasional boiler explosion. But hey, you're already here, so we might as well look around. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now before we jump into this chilly, soot-covered time machine, tell me in the comments, what city are you in, and what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto a cobblestone street in 1900. Immediately your nose fills with a cocktail of smells: coal smoke, manure, unwashed humanity, and something faintly sweet that you hope is bread and not decaying fruit. The world is slower here, but somehow louder. There's the steady clip-clop of horses pulling carriages, children shouting as they dart barefoot across filthy streets, and men in stiff hats arguing in a swirl of cigarette smoke. The air hums with the sound of steam, metal, and shouting. Welcome to America at the turn of the century. Depending on where you land, your experience will vary wildly. If you're in New York City, you're plunged into a noisy electric chaos of immigration, industry, and overwhelming ambition. Tenements climb the skyline like crooked teeth, each packed with families from Ireland, Italy, Russia, and places your history textbook probably ignored. You might pass by a ragged boy selling newspapers at the top of his lungs. Extra! Extra! President McKinley shot, not realizing that you're witnessing history before it's been memorialized in a museum. But take a train or a long bone-rattling wagon ride out west, and the scene shifts entirely. Dirt roads, wide skies, and a quiet so expansive it almost buzzes in your ears. Rural life dominates most of America. The vast majority of people still live in towns so small you could spit across them. Electricity? Maybe in the schoolhouse. Maybe. Running water? Only if you count a bucket. Farmers rise with the sun and go to bed exhausted, their hands cracked and stained, their futures tied directly to the whims of weather, blight, and a bank that couldn't care less. And yet, there's something surprisingly optimistic in the air. It's an age of contradictions. This is the height of the Gilded Age, when millionaires like Carnegie and Rockefeller throw lavish parties under gaslight chandeliers, while children crawl under textile machines to earn 5 cents a day. There's a strange belief bubbling up that the future, somehow, will be better, that the next generation won't have to boil their water or sleep 6 to a bed. One very real historical detail here: in 1900, only about 8,000 cars existed in the entire country. That's right. Cars are basically unicorns with wheels. If you see one, it's probably owned by some eccentric rich guy who wears goggles and calls the car a horseless carriage. The roads? Oh, they're not roads. They're mud traps with the occasional plank laid down in a half-hearted attempt to prevent your boots from vanishing up to the ankles. Now for a fringe fact that feels like a fever dream. In the year 1900, you could buy radioactive water as a health tonic. No, seriously, it was called Radithor, and people actually drank it thinking it would give them energy and cure diseases. Spoiler alert, it did not. It gave them bone cancer. But for all the weirdness and wonder, the early 1900s remain deeply divided. Women can't vote. Black Americans live under the daily threat of Jim Crow violence and lynching. Native populations are still reeling from forced relocations and broken treaties. The US has just officially annexed the Philippines, Puerto Rico and Guam after the Spanish-American War, and there's a hot debate brewing about what kind of imperial power America is becoming. That's one of the biggest scholarly debates still alive today. Was the early 1900s the beginning of true progress, or just the start of a more sophisticated form of inequality? Sure, factories bring jobs, and inventions start popping up like mushrooms after a thunderstorm, but they come wrapped in soot, corruption, and a brutally high cost of human labour. Historians still argue whether this was the golden age of invention or just a gilded cage hiding America's worst instincts. Back on the ground, you're still standing in the middle of a street where horses poop freely, and children treat trolley cars like jungle gyms. A newsstand sells pamphlets for a nickel, and a nearby diner offers beef stew for 10 cents. but you'd better bring your own bowl. Electricity is flickering inside a few buildings, and gas lamps light the rest. The contrast is jarring, like stepping between centuries on a single block. You duck into a general store, shelves are lined with lye soap, patent medicines with ingredients nobody can pronounce, bolts of calico fabric and dusty tins of coffee. The clerk greets you with a nod, but watches you closely. Shoplifting is punishable by a good old-fashioned public shaming, or worse, jail in a place with rats the size of your cat. Outside again, you glance at a newspaper and see headlines about union strikes, anarchist bomb plots, and the continuing battle over labour rights. The industrial machine is roaring to life, and not everyone is thrilled to be caught in its gears. But there's laughter too. Families gather on porches, musicians play on corners, kids play stickball in the alleys. Even in the grime and struggle, life pulses with a kind of fierce, unbreakable spirit. People are building something, sometimes with joy, sometimes with desperation, but always with the hope that the future will thank them for it. And so, you walk on, boots kicking up the dust of a country still defining itself, still pulling itself forward with coal-dusted fingers and raw, aching dreams. So let's get you properly situated. Imagine waking up in this world, whether it's to the clang of a milkman's cart on the cobblestones or the cluck of a chicken that wandered into your kitchen again. Where you live in early 1900s, America makes all the difference in the quality of your survival. If you're in a major city like Chicago, Boston or Philadelphia, you're waking up to dense air thick with coal smoke and whatever the factory next door belched out overnight. You rub your eyes and reach for the chamber pot under your bed, because the closest indoor toilet is 2 blocks away, if you're lucky enough to live in one of the new modern tenement buildings with shared plumbing. Meanwhile, out in the country, the rooster starts screaming at sunrise whether you want it to or not,